He was the face of discovery, a symbol of friendship. And then, everything collapsed. Mike Wolfe, once beloved for his charm and enthusiasm on American Pickers, now stands accused of something darker than anyone imagined. Behind the screen smiles and road trip banter was a secret so chilling, it's turned a TV icon into a convicted criminal. It all started with the death of Frank Frits, Wolfe's longtime co-host and friend. For years, fans believed Frank had been battling stroke-related health issues. But that narrative was shattered when investigators uncovered that his death wasn't a natural tragedy, it was something far more calculated. What began as whispers became a full-blown investigation. And what they found painted a devastating picture. A picture of betrayal, manipulation, and obsession. As details surfaced, the public watched in disbelief as Wolfe went from household name to headline suspect. In court, Mike Wolfe sat silent while prosecutors laid out a disturbing case. His internet searches, phone records, and hidden journals all pointed to one thing: premeditated murder. This wasn't a moment of rage. It was a slow, meticulous plan. The motive? Jealousy. Control. And a legacy Wolfe wasn't willing to share. As the trial unfolded, the prosecution revealed a timeline that began months before Frank's death. Evidence showed Wolfe had begun researching undetectable poisons. He had access to Frank's medication schedule. And according to security footage, he was at Fritz's home just hours before the 911 call was made. Wolfe told emergency responders he had come to check on an old friend and found him unresponsive. But the toxicology report said otherwise. Frank had dangerously high levels of prescription drugs in his system, doses far exceeding what his doctors had prescribed. Doctors later confirmed Frank was known for carefully managing his recovery. Something wasn't adding up. Then came the damning discoveries. Investigators found Wolfe's fingerprints on pill bottles in Frank's home. A search of Wolfe's own residence uncovered a hidden safe filled with unlabeled pills, the same kind that were found in Frank's body. Alongside them was a handwritten journal, detailing years of resentment. One entry, dated just weeks before Frank's death, read, "He thinks he can come back and take the spotlight again. He's forgotten who built this. He's become dead weight. The network knows it. And now, I know what I have to do." The courtroom fell into stunned silence as former crew members testified. They spoke of heated arguments, of Wolfe pushing Frank out of production decisions, of a man obsessed with becoming the sole face of the brand. One assistant recounted hearing Wolfe yell, "There's only room for one picker in this business." But nothing shook the room more than the testimony of Danielle Colby. With visible hesitation and tears, Colby recalled moments behind the scenes that fans never saw. She spoke of a deteriorating friendship, of a shift in Wolfe's demeanor, and a growing hostility toward Frank. She described confronting him about his obsession with control, only to be told to stay out of it. Colby later discovered personal notes in Wolfe's office, ones that listed Frank's exact medication dosages, times, and changes. When asked why he had them, Wolfe claimed he was just worried about Frank's health. But no one believed him. The defense tried to claim the death was a tragic misunderstanding. That Wolfe had been trying to support Frank through recovery. That he was emotional, yes, but not a killer. They brought in character witnesses, former executives, publicists, who read Wolfe's past statements wishing Frank well. But that narrative fell apart when Frank's doctor took the stand. He confirmed that the dosage found in Frank's body had never been prescribed. He shared that Frank was hopeful, even planning to open his own antique store. He was excited, the doctor said. He was recovering. He wanted a fresh start. Then came the prosecution's masterstroke. Forensic accountants presented evidence that in the months leading to Frank's death, Wolfe had begun secretly restructuring his business. New shell companies appeared. Documents showed he had positioned himself to gain full control of the American Pickers brand, including Frank's image rights, in the event of Frank's incapacitation or death. And perhaps most chilling of all, Wolfe had taken out a multi-million-dollar insurance policy on Frank, naming his own company as the sole beneficiary. When added to the list of stolen antiques funneled into those companies after Frank's passing, the financial motive became impossible to ignore. The final blow came during cross-examination. When asked point-blank if he administered the fatal dose to Frank, Wolfe snapped. "You don't know what it's like to build something from nothing," he shouted. "To watch someone ride your success and smile while they take credit." His voice cracked. The courtroom froze. And just like that, the mask slipped. Jurors later said that moment changed everything. After just 4 hours of deliberation, the verdict was unanimous: guilty. The judge sentenced Wolfe to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence was met with gasps. But what followed was even more disturbing. As the judge finished reading his decision, Wolfe stood, screamed, and pointed toward the back of the courtroom. "He's going to ruin everything. He's going to destroy my legacy." But there was no one there to stop the gavel. Mike Wolfe, once America's most famous picker, had picked apart his own life, piece by piece, with greed, obsession, and betrayal. What began as a fall from grace ended in absolute chaos. The courtroom should have been silent as the verdict was read. Instead, it erupted into a scene no one could have predicted. Mike Wolfe, once the calm, collected face of American pickers, snapped in front of a packed courtroom. As the judge delivered a life sentence without parole, Wolfe stood in a fit of rage, slamming his fists onto the defense table, sending papers and a water cup flying. He charged forward, knocking over furniture, attempting to break through the barricade of security. His target? Frank Fritz's family. Guards tried to restrain him, but Wolfe surged ahead, grabbing a neck brace from the evidence table and swinging it like a weapon. One bailiff was struck hard in the shoulder before 3 officers finally brought him down. "I built American pickers. It's my life's work." Wolfe screamed as they cuffed him, kicking and shouting while the judge was rushed from the courtroom. The most haunting moment came as Wolfe, blood rushing, turned to Danielle Colby, seated quietly just feet away. "Tell them the truth," he shouted. "Tell them what Frank was really like." Colby turned away, visibly shaken, as fellow crew members wept in silence. What was once a close-knit team now sat divided, shattered beyond repair. Court records later revealed how Wolfe had spent years manipulating the production crew, turning colleagues against Frank Fritz. Old friendships dissolved under the pressure of Wolfe's control. One producer testified that Wolfe slowly built a circle of loyalty, isolating Fritz from decisions, casting him as the weak link, even as Frank was recovering from a stroke. Now in open court, the deep fractures were undeniable. Wolfe's wild rants only added fuel to the fire. He wanted to start his own show. Said I was outdated. Said the network wanted him back. He yelled as he was dragged out. Several reporters at the scene described the courtroom as utter mayhem. One juror had to be escorted out for medical attention. Even Wolfe's own defense attorney was struck in the chaos, hit by a flying water bottle. The meltdown destroyed any hope of appeal. Legal experts noted the irony. Wolfe's final outburst perfectly aligned with the prosecution's portrayal of him. Volatile, entitled, and obsessed with his image. In the days that followed, former friends and colleagues stepped forward, painting a much darker portrait of Mike Wolfe. Thomas Reynolds, a former American Pickers producer, recalled how Wolfe would explode in anger behind the scenes. "The guy the audience saw, charming, funny, humble, that wasn't him off camera," Reynolds said. "Off camera he was cold. Ruthless. Especially toward junior staff." Stories piled in. Tales of emotional manipulation. Moments of rage during filming. Demands that Frank be removed from scenes. It became clear that Wolfe's obsession with control extended far beyond antiques. It seeped into every relationship, every production decision, and ultimately into the death of his closest partner. The fallout didn't stop there. American Pickers, once one of the History Channel's biggest hits, now faced an uncertain future. All episodes featuring Wolfe were pulled from streaming. The network issued a brief statement expressing shock and sorrow, offering condolences to the Fritz family. But the damage was already done. Sponsors dropped out. Merchandise was discontinued. And the show, once a celebration of American history, became a grim footnote in true crime. Meanwhile, the Fritz family launched legal action of their own. Not only to reclaim Frank's antique collection, but also to challenge the network's failure to act on warning signs. Their attorneys argued that Wolfe's behavior was escalating for years, and that no one did anything. Mental health experts joined the discussion. Forensic psychologist Dr. Robert Keller stated, "Wolfe's behavior is consistent with narcissistic personality disorder, a man obsessed with legacy, unable to share credit, and threatened by the success of those closest to him." He added, "When Frank tried to reclaim his space, Wolfe saw it as war." But perhaps the most disturbing revelation was how Wolfe weaponized his fame. In the weeks following Frank's death, Wolfe went on a social media campaign, grieving publicly, releasing tribute merchandise, even announcing fan memorials. All while knowing the truth. Prosecutor Sarah Donovan made it clear during closing arguments, this was not just a murder. This was a performance. A calculated lie for millions of followers. And then came the financial trail. Investigators discovered over $1 million in donations raised through tribute events and merchandise, most of which were funneled into accounts controlled solely by Wolfe. Accounts registered under shell corporations. Accounts meant to exploit grief. For fans, it was the ultimate betrayal. "He was in our homes every week," said longtime viewer Robert Jenkins. "We believed in him. We believed in the story he told. And now, it's all a lie." Former co-hosts, guest pickers and production staff released statements distancing themselves. The American Picker family was broken, and it wasn't just because of Frank's death. It was the lies, the manipulation, the darkness that had always been there, just hidden beneath the surface. Danielle Colby, who had testified bravely during the trial, announced a leave of absence from television. In a quiet, handwritten note shared on social media, she asked for privacy, adding, "I still believe in the mission, to preserve history. But right now, I need to preserve myself." The others? Silent. One former staffer called it a funeral for a family that never really existed. The bond the audience thought they saw on camera? That was long gone. Even the judge's final words before Wolfe's breakdown felt prophetic. "Mr. Wolfe, you claim to be a guardian of American history. But you erased a part of it, a man who stood beside you, who helped build your legacy. And when his spotlight returned, you chose vengeance over truth." That judgment hit harder than any prison sentence. In his final public moment before being dragged out of court, Mike Wolfe locked eyes with the jury and shouted, "Goodbye forever. The truth will come out someday." But for most watching, the truth already had. This wasn't about antiques. This wasn't about television. This was about ego. About control. About how one man's hunger for legacy led him to destroy the very thing he claimed to love. Frank Fritz's legacy, however, remains untouched. To those who knew him, he was loyal, passionate, driven by discovery, not fame. His loss is more than a headline. It's a reminder of what real authenticity looks like. Of what it means to be dedicated to your craft, your friends, and the history you're trying to preserve. Mike Wolfe is now a name etched in infamy. But Frank? Frank is remembered for more than a tragedy. He's remembered for the joy he brought to viewers, the care he gave to his work, and the quiet strength he carried even after the cameras turned off. Justice was served, but at a cost no one will forget. And now, as Wolfe begins his life sentence behind bars, one truth remains unshaken. The truth always finds its way out.